Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball series. Can we save the Oakland A's? And we are at the start of the international free agent signing period here in the 2033 to 2034 offseason. We've made several trades that I think are moving this franchise in the right direction. Have not been very active in free agency yet, but that is beginning to change a little bit. We have, as you can see, a number of offers out to players for minor league contracts to bolster our organization a bit. And we also have made an offer to the outfielder Juan Acevedo. You may remember him. He is an international, actually he's not an international free agent. He's an independent league player that we had scouted, and we had a 2-week period to sign exclusively. Didn't end up taking advantage of that. He's been insistent on getting a spot in the starting lineup. But YME943 brought up the point in the response to the last episode that at the very least Acevedo is potentially interesting trade bait. I think he is a useful major league player, even if there's no guarantees that he'll make our roster. So we have put out an offer to him. I do, and I think I said this in the comment to YME943, think it's a little bit odd that he's open to sign with anybody at now, and that the other teams don't seem to be lining up to sign him, but they still might offer us something in trade for him. But that is just kind of the vagaries of the way that the game works. But we do have an offer out to Juan Acevedo. Still also have our eye on the top pitcher available, and that is the international free agent Naoki Sato out of Japan. Both Avery Shayam and Calvin Ha mentioned potentially at least keeping the lines of communication open. We checked in on him at the end of the last episode, and he is alleging that he's got an offer from the Dodgers and he's looking for 4 years, $22.2 million a year. That is not an amount that I am willing to pay for a reliever, as excellent a reliever as I think Penguin Sato can be. I guess at this point I'm willing to see if he's bluffing based on the experience we've had with regular free agents and international free agents over the last few years with the Dodgers. The Dodgers obviously have a big payroll, and we've had a number of players that we've been interested in that have ended up with signing with the Dodgers, and in some cases they've said, oh, we're really interested in you, and kind of felt like they were using us to bid things up, and they ended up with the Dodgers anyways. So I'm not going to put an offer out to Sato right now. If he does happen to linger on the market and he's bluffing a bit as far as the Dodgers, which I don't think he is. My hunch is he's probably going to sign with the Dodgers over the next couple weeks. But if he does linger on the market, we've still got the money to potentially be a player for him. Quiet Time also mentioned Juan Aguayo, said that they've had some success with low stuff pitchers. I think that's interesting context. You know, if you think back to this team several years ago, we did sign Hidero Endo, a guy who had poor contact and brutally poor avoid strikeout ratings as a hitter. Not the type of player that I would normally sign, and we did experiment with him for a year, and we've been following him since then. But although Quiet Time's had success with pitchers with really good movement and really good control despite weak stuff, $4 million for a guy whose all of his pitches are below average, has some negative personality traits, and is going to be 27 years old. Just not a direction that I want to go. Another guy they mentioned was Juan Ballester, who is a 17-year-old prospect. Does have some upside and normally would be a guy that we'd add into our organization, but you look at his ceiling and it's really not that impressive. And with the high financial ambition, adaptability, and work ethic, just not the type of player I'm even interested in having in our minor league organization at this point. But always appreciate the thoughts and different things to talk and think about. As I said, we'll keep an eye on Sato and see what happens. And another reason why I'm not willing to just throw money at Sato right now and potentially get into a bidding war with the Dodgers is that we have made a trade since the last episode and traded a few 4A kind of guys, including Brian Buelvis, who was an important member of our team several years ago. Minor league catcher Juan Ramirez, who doesn't look like a big-time prospect to me. But we also did trade Bob Day, who's been kind of a borderline 26-man roster player for us last season and was going to be in the mix to be on the 26-man roster this year. We drafted him out of Pepperdine a few years ago, but he's almost 26 years old. He did a incredible job in the 2 games that he's played at the major league level, going 2 for 4 with 3 walks. So he's got a ridiculous 261 WRC plus over the course of his career. But he's fragile physically. He's going to be turning 26 years old soon. He doesn't bring much to the table defensively. Not all that bright. Not that good a runner. Does have a decent right-handed bat. And I think he could be a useful 4th or 5th outfielder. But there were no guarantees that he's going to even make our 26-man roster. And we were able to bring a pretty good reliever on board as a rental. And that's 33-year-old Luke Little, who had been added to the trade block by the Astros. We took a look at the trade block between the last episode and this episode, and Little was the most interesting guy to us, making close to $18 million, but with the package we put together, we got the Astros to retain the vast majority of that. He's a free agent after this year, so he is a pure rental. But Little is a very good reliever, a 6-time All-Star at this point, and you look at his major league stats with the Cubs and the Astros, and every stop in his career, he's been an above-average player as far as his ERA plus and an above-average pitcher as far as his FIP minus. Now, he admittedly is coming off of the worst season in his career last year, but I think it gives us a potential closer, particularly given our expectation that we're going to try to use Levi Sterling in a stopper role. And if somehow things emerge and we're able to bring Sato on board, Little would give us incredible depth in the bullpen if we ended up using him in a setup role. So he is certainly a proven closer. And with Little, Sterling, and Jeremy Scholl kind of as the 3 guys we already have at the back end of our bullpen for next year now, or for more accurately this upcoming season now, I feel like we probably have the strongest kind of 7th, 8th, and 9th inning pitchers that we've ever had in this playthrough. So although you could argue that with the loss of Chase Burns, perhaps our starting pitching isn't going to be quite as good as it was last year. Now I'm admittedly hoping that the acquisition of the lefty Lambert will offset that and maybe even be better than Burns over time. But even though our starting pitching may be not quite what it was a year ago when it was one of the best starting staffs in baseball, I think this bullpen could be as good as we've ever had. And the other thing that was nice about bringing Little on board is that we got a 3-point bump in fan interest to help offset the pain that we felt when we ended up losing Kyle Manzardo to free agency. That dropped us all the way from 63 to 56, but we did get a nice 3-point bump bringing Little on board. We'll have to keep track of how much we lose when he leaves us next year, but we will cross that bridge when we come to it. So with the stage now set on what we're thinking about regular free agency and international free agency and what we've recently done in the trade market, time to turn our attention to what's going to be the primary focus of what I think will be a rather short episode, and that's international amateur free agency. Thank you, as always, to all the members of the Worldwide Scouting Department who shared opinions with us over the last 24 hours or so since the past episode was put up online. And I don't think there is as much a consensus this year among the Worldwide Scouting Department as there has been in previous seasons. Most, but not all, viewers kind of agreed with our assessment that it's probably a year to go with batters over pitchers. Paul West, in particular, just said, yeah, just pick a batter. That's the way to go. The highest ceiling player in the draft is Alvaro Cepeda, in my opinion, and he's John Lambert's choice. I don't see myself going with Cepeda. I agree that if he reaches his ceiling, he's got a nice combination of good fielding, speed, and a potentially outstanding bat. But with low adaptability, work ethic, and intelligence, he's got low ratings in probably the three most important factors to ultimately achieve someone's full potential. So while I agree with John that his ceiling is the highest, I think the risk-reward of Cepeda compared to some of these guys is just a little bit out of whack. Jesus Aguilar, another center fielder, not quite the same range defensively, not quite the same speed, and honestly, not quite the same bat, although it still could be a very good bat. But he is a durable left-handed hitter who's smart. And Aguilar was the recommendation of both James Miller Media and Stanley Rosella as far as who they would go with in this class. And then I started getting some deeper strategies from some of the Worldwide Scouting Department members as well. Aguilar combined with another center fielder, Luis Cuellar, a 16-year-old out of Mexico. Not as good defensively, not as much speed, but an even better personality and a good solid bat, although I think Aguilar's is even better. But pairing Aguilar, who's looking for $2.8 million, with Cuellar, who's looking for $750,000, was the recommended route of three scouts: Avery Shaham, YME943, and the newest member of the Worldwide Scouting Department, Calvin Ha. And I think that's definitely an interesting perspective, as I've kind of spent some time offline over the last 24 hours thinking about what I might want to do. I do kind of think just going big and high in terms of our offers for two players that I really like in the beginning of this period, give myself the best chance possible to sign two guys that I really like a lot, is the way to go. And as I talked about, the Aguilar-Cuellar combination was recommended by three scouts. There were other options, though, and we talked about John Lambert preferring Cepeda, whose personality scared me off a bit. But John Lambert likes pairing a couple of low-cost but really interesting options in Cuellar, who we've already talked about, with the shortstop. With the shortstop, Jorge Sevilla. Sevilla is a guy I really like. Good personality. Looks like he could be pretty good defensively. Outstanding speed, and a potentially excellent contact hitter with an incredible ability to drive the ball into the gaps. The home run power and the eye are concerns, and even the eye is definitely not going to be anything special if it fully develops. But for those of you who followed our Buffalo Wings expansion series with OOTP 24, there certainly are some similarities between Inch Sevilla and Deshaun Seifu, who was one of the top players in that playthrough for us in Buffalo. So Sevilla is intriguing to me, and appreciate the thoughts from John Lambert on him. Pairing up Jorge Sevilla with the best pitcher, Juan Trejo, was what Jarek Braxton recommended. Another guy with a great personality with Trejo, really good stamina and good ability to hold runners, and a potentially solid three-pitch arsenal. I don't think his stuff is going to be anything special, but could have average stuff with plus movement, plus control, which would still be a pretty interesting combination. Trejo looking for $3.2 million. Could end up going for a lot of money, as by far the best starting pitching prospect in this class. But I do appreciate Jarek's thoughts on that. And that was a third pairing that was recommended. And the fourth and final pairing that was recommended is pairing the center fielder Jesus Aguilar, who is a pretty good, solid hitting prospect. Probably has the second highest ceiling as far as a batter, behind only Cepeda in my mind. And pairing him with the shortstop Sevilla was what was recommended by Third Degree Top Gun. And although the Sevilla Trejo, Sevilla Cuellar, and Aguilar Cuellar options were also popular, I am landing with Third Degree Top Gun on this one, and I want to make offers to Aguilar and Sevilla right from the start. I really do like Cuellar, and I think he's got a lot of good value, but he is not as good at anything overall. I guess he's got a little more home run power, but overall, Aguilar's bat I like more. I like Aguilar's speed better, like Aguilar's range in the outfield better, like Aguilar's durability better. The only thing that Cuellar has on him is he's a lot cheaper, and he's got some better personality traits. But I don't know that we need two center fielders who are really kind of the same kind of guy. And I'm really intrigued by adding a potential Deshaun Seifu into our organization, particularly because he does have some good personality traits and could be playing a pretty important position in the infield. With those ratings, he could play second, third, or short. I think second is probably his best position overall. And we're just going to be as aggressive as possible, try to do everything we can to land both Sevilla and Aguilar. And what that means is I'm going to offer every penny of the $5.7 million that we have to spend in Oakland this year to those two players. You can certainly make an argument that I may be spending a little more than I need, which is true. But I want to give myself the best chance of possible of getting both of these guys locked up and on board over the next couple of weeks. And I think the way to do that is to be pretty aggressive with what I offer them. So Sevilla, as we talked about, is looking for $1.5 million. We're going to offer him $1.9 million right away. Submit that offer to Mr. Sevilla, and then every other penny that we have left, we are going to offer to Mr. Aguilar. Says he's looking for $2.8 million. We have got I don't know why they include his money that he's looking for in there. That's a little weird. But we can obviously offer him more than that, 2.8. But if we put it up to 3.8 million, that will bring us to the full 5.7. So we're going to put that offer out to Mr. Aguilar, and we'll see what happens. Again, I do appreciate all of the thoughts on which direction to go. I agree that it's very conceivable that we probably could have gotten Aguilar for maybe 3.25, 3.3, 3.4 million in a best case scenario. and maybe could get Sevilla for 1.7 million. So we're potentially leaving a second tier or prospect two on the board by really being aggressive with the money that we're offering. But as I said, I think this is a huge IAFA period if we're able to get both of these guys signed. And I want to just come in with our best offer right from the start and try to get them locked up quickly before a bidding war can even develop with either of them. No guarantees it's going to work out, but I think if we want to get both guys, I think the strategy that we're trying gives us the best opportunity to end up with both of them. Now, there's a chance we end up with neither, but I tend to think we're going to get at least one and hopefully two. And if we only get Aguiar, if a guy like Cuellar is still on the market after we do that, we still have plenty of money to go after somebody like him. And the initial feedback yesterday from Aguiar and today from Sevilla, as we've simmed forward today, both positive. Supposedly at this point, they both favor those offers, so let's see if they come to fruition. And I mentioned that based on previous experience trying to compete with players with the Dodgers, didn't feel like we had a real good chance with Sato, and he has already signed with the Dodgers, so I think that he was just looking for us to maybe help him earn a little bit more money, making over $20 million a year for 4 years. As good a potential reliever as we think Sato is and could be. Even with that brilliant fastball and his slider, he's not a starter despite that 45 stamina, and average of over $20 million a year for 4 years for a reliever, even a great reliever, is just not a number that I think we should realistically be trying to hit with the smallest budget in baseball. You can see some other familiar names also gone. Andrew Nardi, been with us the last couple years, goes to the Mets. Shane Baz goes to the Nationals. And Emmanuel Clase goes to Texas. So some of the top pitchers who were still on the market are now gone. Makes me feel even better about the trade we just made for Mr. Little to bolster our bullpen, and the trade we made earlier this offseason to bring the young starting pitcher Lambert into the Oakland organization. And although we spent every penny that we had available with the 2 offers we made, I think that things worked out really well. Aguiar, who I would say was the consensus number 1 pick among the worldwide scouting department, although as we talked about, a lot of the scouting reports we got on Aguiar had him included with packages with other players, but we brought him on board and certainly think he's an extremely high-end prospect. And we also got Sevilla signed right away, who we think could be an excellent infield prospect for us as well. So, again, we may have overpaid a bit, but what I wanted to do was give myself the maximum chance to get 2 players that I really liked in the IAFA period this season. And it's only been a handful of days since the period opened up, and we've got 2 of them signed already. So I think things went pretty well, and a pretty simple IAFA period here. You can see Cepeda, the other very highly regarded center fielder that we talked about, whose personality scared me off a bit, ended up signing for the full $5.7 million maximum with the Guardians organization. And Juan Acevedo, the young outfielder, has also gotten back on the $2 million offer that we made to him. Says the offer's attractive, but he's not quite ready to sign on the dotted line quite yet. And Juan Acevedo has signed with us, so another solid right-handed hitting corner outfielder into the organization. He is 6'4", only 30 infield range, but I think he could play a competent-ish first base given his size. As we talked about, no guarantees that he's going to make the 26-man roster, but we could look to deal him to another team. And he is also a guy who is a new entrant into the Major League Baseball infrastructure. Has 3 option years left since this is his first contract at the Major League level. So we certainly could stash him in AAA as well. $2 million, certainly a lot for the A's organization to be spending on a player who ends up in AAA. But as we work through spring training and work through our 26-man roster, Acevedo is a guy that could make the team, could end up in AAA, and could end up being trade bait for us to try to help some other part of our roster. And we've simmed ahead to the beginning of February. Got some not great reports in terms of player development. Mike Lambert, the starter that we traded for this offseason, and Jamie DeVore, the starter we traded for last offseason, both have had some pretty significant declines according to our scout in terms of their abilities. DeVore in particular, his stamina plunging from 55 to 40 and also beginning to lose some velocity at the age of 26. So not an ideal situation given that when we look at our pitching staff, DeVore and Lambert were penciled in as our potential number 2 and 3 starters, but hopefully it's just a quirk in the numbers, and when these guys start facing some real live players in spring training and as the season gets underway, they'll be as good as we expected them to be, if not better. And we've made it to the start of spring training, simmed ahead another 3 weeks or so since the last time we checked in. And that means that we are close to finding out what's going to happen in the development lab, just 1 day away. And we've got 4 out of 10 programs that are looking like they'll be potentially successful. Interestingly, it's the 3 easiest programs that we tried. The control programs for Penniman and Mangano, and the better movement program for pitcher Amari Raphael that are successful, along with potentially the most difficult program that we had tried, adding a pitch to the arsenal of the young reliever Doug Weiss, which he is still excelling in. Clearly things can change over this final day, but it looks like we're going to get 4 successful programs. Not pleased that Alejandro Landin is really struggling with his ability to generate bat speed. He may regress a little bit in something when all is said and done there. But again, things can change over the next day as we get spring training underway and play our first game of the spring against Minnesota before we get the results on this first most significant run of players through the development lab. But it looks like it's going to be a very successful development lab, 4 for 4 as far as pitchers potentially improving. Unfortunately, it looks like it could be 0 for 6 as far as everyday players improving in the last 3.5, 4 months of action in our development lab. And we lost on the opening day of spring training 2-0 to the Twins, and we now have the results from our programs, and really nothing has changed. So we were 0 for 6 with the programs with the batters this offseason, but 4 for 4 with the pitchers. So I think that's just an anecdotal quirk in terms of the results. I don't know that we're doing anything materially right with the pitchers, that we're doing wrong with the position players, but we'll continue to think about our approach and try to figure things out. Alejandro Landin did end up having a poor result with that program where he attempted to generate more bat speed and home run power. His current avoid strikeout rating dropped by less than 5 points. So I guess in the scope of everything, it's not the end of the world as far as a poor result, but still not optimal. And we were hoping that the young infielder was going to really take a step forward with his power. He's a guy who is certainly in the mix for a spot on the 26-man roster. Tend to think, particularly with the fact that it wasn't a successful program for him, we'll start him in AAA, as he was not that effective in 23 games after he got promoted to that level at the end of last year. But that was the least successful program. Bertrand Albrighton also trying to improve his home run power. Nothing there. That was going to be a huge one in terms of Albrighton potentially being able to make this 26-man roster. We love his personality. We like his defensive versatility, although he's not particularly good defensively. But if he could have taken a big step forward with his home run power this offseason, that certainly would have helped increase his chances of making the team. The issue with Albrighton is that he's also out of options, so he may be a guy that it's finally time to move on from officially. Sergio Palomares, we're trying to work on quality of contact with him. No progress there. No progress on quality of contact with Shiloh Solis. Strength and conditioning with Jake Ortega, unfortunately, is unsuccessful. He had been 5 or 6 weeks ago, looked like he was going to have a successful program. Unfortunately, he still fragile physically and doesn't seem to have made any improvements there. And Arturo Uresti, the top-rated prospect in our organization, worked on quality of contact with him, trying to really jumpstart his development. And unfortunately, the number 22 prospect in baseball didn't make any substantive progress this offseason. But as we talked about with the pitching, things worked out really well. Jaheim Penniman improved his control, supposedly, although there were no noticeable changes. Looks like he's still 40 out of 40 here on his updated scouting report. So I think, unfortunately, the second overall pick in 2028 is always going to have some issues with his control because he was on the scouting report 40 of 45 at some point over this winter. We were hoping he might make that improvement there, but even though it was a successful program, we kind of view his ceiling as his control at being a 40 right now. So I think walks are going to be something that unfortunately plagues Penniman over the course of his career. Josh Mangano, also allegedly a successful program, but no noticeable changes in his control. Similarly, he was a guy who we thought had a higher ceiling, and that's part of the reason that we put him in the program. So a little bit disappointing that with both Mangano and Penniman, we basically just have confirmed that their control is at that 40 level rather than the higher levels that we thought they might be able to get to. But we do also have the two outstanding programs, and I'm hoping that there will actually be some noticeable improvements there. Amari Raphael, his potential movement and his current movement ratings both improved by less than 5 points, but still some progress with his pitch movement, hopefully allowing some fewer homers. Our first-round pick out of Piedmont College in 2032 was a combined 13-5 in high A and double A last year. And looking at his ratings here, certainly looks more than ready for the Texas League. The question is whether we'll start him off in AAA or maybe give him a little bit of seasoning at the start of this year in double A. But Raphael certainly could be making his major league debut before the end of this year. And then Doug Weiss, we put him in that extremely difficult to achieve adding a new pitch to his arsenal. And depending on the results here, this could be big. Weiss is the college reliever that we picked in the draft last year who had decent stamina and a nice two-pitch arsenal. But adding a pitch to his arsenal could potentially open up the opportunity for Weiss to become a starting pitcher. And he did learn a changeup. So I guess the question is, how good is that changeup now and potentially in the future? And it looks like it could be a useful pitch. It's not far off major league quality at this point, and we think it can get a little bit better. So now with the fact that Weiss has a potential 3-pitch arsenal, as well as that 40 stamina, we thought the 4th-round pick out of Austin Peay could be a pretty interesting reliever for us in the not-so-distant future. And now, quite honestly, there's a chance that maybe he could become a starter for us, set in his position to starting pitcher. Still think his stuff there could be above average if everything works out. So he's clearly not quite ready for the majors yet, but he hasn't allowed a run as a professional at this point. Admittedly, it's only 9 2/3 innings over rookie ball and A ball after we signed him last year, but feeling really good about Weiss's progress in the development lab this offseason, and the fact that he did add that changeup in with his fastball and slider. And as we talked about, there's some chance that Weiss's future now maybe is a starter for us rather than in the bullpen, which would be positive. So between now and the start of the next episode, we're going to give some thought to exactly what development programs we want to do over this shorter window we have now. Certainly going to have some infielders, especially our potential shortstop, Mr. Toribio, working on their defense, and we'll probably have some other programs as well, likely mostly related to running skills and stealing skills, etc., etc., etc. But 4 out of 10 overall for the player development lab programs this offseason. Not a horrible result, not a great result. Certainly would have loved if we were successful with at least one of the position players, but it was not to be the case this offseason. And with that, we're going to finish up this episode, turn our attention to getting ready for spring training, where we've got a few questions as far as how we're going to round out this 26-man roster. I'd say there's probably about 22 spots that are pretty firmly entrenched, but I think we've got a 5th outfielder and a 6th infielder spot that are going to be hotly contested. We've got a couple spots in the bullpen that will probably be hotly contested. If we happen to have an injury or two in spring training, that could throw a wild card into things. And there's always a chance that there might be somebody interesting that we can bring in off of the free agent market as well. Doesn't necessarily look like there's a ton of high-end batting talent still available, but a guy like Pablo Aliendo even could be in the mix for a spot as a catcher for us. Taking a look at the pitchers who are available at this point, if Graterol was not wrecked physically and recovering from elbow ligament reconstruction surgery till after the season, he could be an interesting guy for us to consider. Juan Ballester, the youngster with the negative personality traits, is still out there. Mason Albright, a lefty that I think we've had in the organization before, might be worth trying to bring into camp as well. So we'll probably be adding a couple of more guys onto the AA and AAA rosters over the next few weeks. And hopefully we'll be able to keep this team healthy through spring training as we try to prepare for a 5th playoff appearance in 6 years here in 2034. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.